bound buttonhole. A bound buttonhole is a buttonhole made out of fabric having strips of fabric forming the welts to the buttonhole. Materials needed include garment fabric, a 2x2 piece of garment fabric used for reinforcement, lining, fusible interfacing, pencil, shears, ruler, and pins. Start by ironing on the fusible interfacing to wrong side of garment fabric. Using a sharp pencil, mark the lining with the following measured lines. First, create a center buttonhole line 1.5 inches horizontal to the center of the lining. Next, exactly 1/4 of an inch above and below the center line, draw a 1.5 inch horizontal line. Next, create 2 perpendicular lines extending beyond the box. Once you have your box completed, double check that all of your lines are 1.5 inches across and 1/4 of an inch apart. Exactly 1/8 of an inch above and below the center line, dash in a horizontal line. Connect the dots to form a line ending just shy of the box. With the pencil side up, place lining on top of garment fabric and fusible interfacing. Pin in place. Increase stitch length up to a 4 or a 5 because we will be basting a square box around the buttonhole opening to hold it in place while we work with it. The square does not need to be exactly perfect because it will be removed before garment completion. Once square is sewn, flip over to the right side of the fabric and pin in place the 2x2 wool piece of garment fabric to the right side of the fabric. Make sure it is centered. Once it is pinned in place, turn back to the lining side and use a basting stitch to stitch along the center lines as well as both of the 1/4 inch above and below the center lines. Start stitching outside the vertical lines and continue past the vertical line. Make sure you do not back up or tie threads. On the right side of the fabric, fold patch towards the center line along the basted line. Finger press and pin in place at the ends. Using a 2.0 stitch, stitch along the 1/8 of an inch line from the lining side. This is the dashed line that we created. Make sure that you are starting exactly on the vertical line on one side and stopping on the vertical line on the other. Make sure you do not use the back stitch. To secure threads, we are going to pull threads through and tie. To do this, gently pull the thread from the bottom to the top and tie in a securing knot. Make sure that you are securing the thread at both ends of the stitch line. Repeat steps on the opposite side by folding the patch towards the center basting line, finger pressing and pinning in place, and then sewing on the 1/8 inch line. From the lining side, there should be 5 visible lines. Remove basting stitches now. This includes the center line, the 1/4 of an inch above and below. From the right side of the fabric, make sure that the center is open and the patches are out of the way. From the wrong side of the fabric, cut along the center line, ending a 1/4 of an inch before you reach the ends. Cut diagonally into the corners, forming triangles. Push the lips through the opening to the wrong side of the fabric and press. Once you have it pressed, diagonally baste the lips of the bound buttonhole together. Place the buttonhole right side up on the machine. Fold back just enough of the fabric to expose the tiny triangles on the end of the buttonhole. Stitch back and forth across this end, attaching to the reinforcement fabric. Make sure that this is done to both sides to reinforce the buttonhole. Once this is complete, remove the diagonal basting in the buttonhole and the square basting around the buttonhole, and your buttonhole will now be complete.